Deputy Prime Minister, it's great to have you here at the Warsaw Security Forum. I want to ask you to just walk us through, in your mind, where we are with the counteroffensive, because there are a lot of questions in the West about whether any real progress has been made.
I'd rather get us to understanding where we are generally. It's like 10 years of the Revolution of Dignity, which we will mark this year. And this is where we are 10 years after Ukrainian people has stood up for its European choice, for its sovereignty, for its territorial integrity, which we were not thinking, which is under threat back when we were standing on a Maidan. And from this perspective, we as Ukrainians are doing really well. We're coping great. Not on a single day has been in doubt. And the price only were getting higher, but we know where we stand and where we go, and we have nearly the whole world backing us up. And in that regard, especially when we are talking about counteroffensive, from this perspective, I think that the major thing is that this is the moment of war when we are only moving forward. So that gives us the understanding that Russia are running through the war of exhaustion. Russians are trying to freeze the situation. But the very fact that we continue counteroffensive measures day by day, inch by inch, meter by meter, we are moving forward, which means that we should not really think about the timelines, this is not the Twitter, right? This is not the social media, whatever. This is the real life, and this is not the episodes of a specific movie, so that you can see the blowing operation. So this is a daily process, which is continuing for many, many days ahead, and which is only moving forward with the assistance that we have from international partners, which is critically lacking because this is the land war. And manpower and the military power is totally uncompared. So nobody should not think about the timelines. This is not what we are talking about. It's the support of Ukraine, which should be accelerated to make us able to move inch by inch every day.
So you expect open-ended support?
What?
So you expect open-ended support?
Of course, and we need more support in the moment when it's the hardest, because it's a long run understanding that we do not know how much would it takes for Ukraine to deoccupy all the territories. All we know is that we are moving forward. We know what we need. We know that we only can save our people with fighter jets, which is in a plenty present at the Russian armed forces, and we need to get what we need.
What about the United States and European countries that are in the midst of political turmoil of their very own? And I mean upcoming elections, governments that aren't necessarily pro-Ukraine or at least pro the war effort. How does that change your calculus?
Probably it's really important to change the mindset over all of these things. Of course, we are at war, but we are a European nation. We are a family. All European continent has around 17 different types of elections. And the major challenge here is to preserve unity. So, and we always manage to cope with that pretty good. It's not the first and the last elections in the United States. It's always a huge and a massive process in the United States per se. But I think that it's part of the democratic process. There is a lot of decisions, if not all of the decisions related to help and support Ukraine, they were taken collectively. By all the bunch of the democratic states from both sides of Atlantic. And it's extremely hard to make a one-day decision to step away from that.
Except President Trump, in his time in office, did several of those.
Yeah,
and the worry is that he might come back to office and do it again.
Well, again...
I mean, if Ukraine were on the chopping block in that sense, Is that something that you guys are prepared for?
Well, United States is not a brand new and a young democracy. It's an extremely resilient set of institutions, not represented only by president. And with President Obama, with President Trump, especially now with President Biden, Ukraine has always had a bipartisan support on most resolute issues which has been taken. We made our best to make sure that we are not speculated, although there were attempts, and we will do our best to make sure that it will continue. So we understand that now it's a family business, and we really have to cope with our challenges together. And I think on the opposite, looking from the perspective of the upcoming elections in the US, the elections in Slovakia and Poland and any other countries, it's the Russian way of looking at the things, how to use the situation to undermine the unity, how to use the situation to throw some division, how to step back on some issues. This is what Russians are looking for. They do the same calculations. They
use the conflict.
They use the conflict, they use propaganda, and they just fuel the populistic groups who are rising their heads. So this is not the angle we should be looking at that. And if people, media, politicians would have this in focus, that would be really helpful.
Tell me this. When you look at the energy dynamic today, obviously you have power companies in the Ukraine that are national power grid as well as private power distributors. Obviously, we're coming up onto winter. There are a lot of concerns that Vladimir Putin will again target power infrastructure in Ukraine. What, in your mind, should the Europeans be doing to bolster your energy capacity? Is it a question of investment?
Well, there are so many things which have already been done by European Union itself to strengthen itself. So you remember these years, and I would say a decade of discussing of this Nord Stream 2 and its threat to the national and then the security of European continent, and basically growing dependence from Russia. That does not exist anymore. And the largest energy crisis affected by full-scale war and Russian invasion in Europe has been overcome. So they have now greater sovereignty. They have more like all-European approach, and they become stronger in terms of energy independence. Moreover, Ukraine has become part of the electricity market,
yes,
which helped us to survive throughout the war because we were not isolated. So we were able to ensure the exchange of electricity. There were like some problems. I'm not the electricity person per se, but I did the political solution, political deal on that. So it already was a very important decision. But we are preparing for the winter. We understand that Russians would definitely be more sophisticated than the last winter.
Yes.
They use winter and energy infrastructure as the element of threatening civilian population, destabilization, and etc., as they cannot physically occupy the areas. So we did our contingency planning. We have prepared the list of our needs. We have funding from individual European partners, and we are preparing ourselves for a severe, very dramatic winter, and we are at the same time are part of the European energy market. So this is one part. The other part, it should not really distract us from necessity to strengthen the sanctions pressure over Russian Federation. Nuclear energy has become the instrument of blackmailing. Russia should be deprived of any instruments of influence on EU countries, which it has right now. It's Hungary, it's other countries across the European continent. These instruments should no longer be in a possession of the Russian Federation, but they have it. They influence these countries, and they continue earning money on the nuclear blackmailing.
So in your mind, these nations like Hungary, for example, should be working hand in hand with the EU in order to diversify?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It might require not very let's say, pleasant decisions on decontracting some things which were agreed with the Russian Rosatom or Russian generally nuclear on energy sector, but there should be definitely a phase-out strategy. Otherwise, it would look like that we're not learning on our mistakes.